This morning, we're talking a little bit more on something we've discussed previously, but this is a special session on opening leads. We're going to talk about how you play when you have the balance of power on the defense. In other words, the opponents maybe are in a game contract and you're sitting there looking at 11 high card points or 12. Partner has 2 jacks maybe, or a queen. How do we think when we're on opening lead, and how do we go about planning the defense? This is the main thrust of this lesson. We're going to talk about some of the other aspects. I'm trying to incorporate a lot of what we've talked about lately into these lessons because none of this stands alone. You have to integrate all of this into your game in order for you to get the best results from studying it. So I'm going to grab the screen here and we'll get started. So, defending when your partner is broke. This can be a challenge. Now, maybe you know that your partner is broke, but let's say you didn't bid. Either one of the defenders bid. So the declarer doesn't have any idea that that's the situation that exists. So you have an advantage here. Partner knows that you should have some values because he doesn't. Either your partner has values or the opponents are underbid. Maybe they belong in slam and they didn't find it. But in general, you can figure out by the level of the contract and the number of points in your hand, even before you leave, about how many points your partner will have. And then you can firm up the idea when you see the dummy. So Barbara Seagram calls this the rule of 40. Donna Compton calls it the number rule. Whatever you call it, all you're doing is thinking about how many points your partner has and what kind of cards he could have in his hand based on that number that you've come up with. Maybe you need your partner to have the ace over here for your plan to work. Well, if he doesn't have 4 high card points in his hand, then your plan isn't going to work and you need to go to plan B. That's the reason for using this rule. And the defenders have time when the declarer is making his plan. That's the time when the defenders should be making their plan. This is particularly true when the balance of points is really heavily weighted toward one of the defenders or the other one. Sometimes the declarer knows that this is the case because one of the defenders bid and the other one didn't. But this in general, if you don't have an idea from the bidding, you can figure out about how many points your partner has simply by using the number 17, 19, and opponents are in a game contract. Your number rule is 14. The number you use for your number rule is 14. Let's say you have 12 points in your hand and the opponents are in a game contract. Unless it's a suit contract that was bid on shape more than high card points, there are 14 points outstanding. If you have 12 of them, your partner is busted, basically. Now, if they're at an invitational level contract, that is 2 no trump or 3 of a suit, including the minors, maybe they wandered around in the bidding and tried to get to game and couldn't, just didn't have enough values for the responder to bid the game, or maybe the opener had a minimum opening and he got an invitation and declined. So they ended up at that invitational level. Well, that means they have about 22 or 23 points between them, and you use 17 as your number rather than 14. In other words, the defense has 3 or 4 more points than they do when the opponents are playing in a game contract. And finally, if they're in a part score, then that means that's anything below 2 no trump. So any 2-level bid or even 1 no trump, if they've ended up in 1 no trump, then generally they have maybe half the points in the deck. Even if the opener bid 1 no trump and the responder passed, he doesn't have 8 points. So on average, he will have about 4, and the 1 no trump opener will have about 16 on average. And so usually they'll have about 20 points between them. So then you use 19. You can use 19 or 20 for that part score. If it's easier for you to use 20, use 20. This is not rocket science here. This is an approximation. So when you have the number of points based on the contract and you know how many the defense should have, you know how many points you have, then you have a pretty good idea of what your partner has. And you can use this number to help you decide whether to defend passively or aggressively. Generally, when there's a huge imbalance in power, you want to defend passively. That is, make the declarer do all of the work. But if your partner has 6 or more high card points, then you can afford to lead more aggressively. For instance, you might decide, hey, it's appropriate for me to lead this suit, and the only thing I have in this suit is king and 3 small. Well, if partner has at least 6 points, meaning he might have the ace in that suit, then you can feel justified in leading that suit. But if he couldn't possibly have an ace, all you're doing is finessing yourself. So this is the first thing that you do when you decide about how many points your partner has, is decide, am I going to defend passively or aggressively? A good deal of the time, the auction will tell you to defend passively, and you don't have to rely on the number rule. But if there's any doubt in your mind, think about it that way. Now, when you're defending a suit contract and partner hasn't bid, your first choice for a lead is often a singleton that you have. But if your partner is completely broke, is this really a good idea? If he can't possibly have the ace in order to win the trick and lead it back so you can get a ruff, then all you're doing is helping the declarer set up that suit. If your partner does have a minor honor in that suit, you've just finessed him, and for no good reason, because you know he cannot possibly have an ace. If that's the case, then you need to consider another lead, because leading that singleton is not going to bear fruit. Now, if you have very good reason to believe that partner has 4 or more high card points, then leading the singleton is a good choice if no other exceptions apply. Okay, remember, we have exceptions to when it's a good idea to lead a singleton. First one is when you hold a natural trump trick. Yes, I know you can get a trick by trumping, and you can also get a trick when you have the natural trump trick. So what's the difference? Well, you make life easier on the declarer if you trump, because now he can pick up that trump honor. That's the general reason why you don't lead a singleton when holding an, say, like queen third. You are sitting behind the bidder of the suit and you hold queen third. You have a reasonable expectation of getting a trick with that queen. So if you lead a singleton and then you ruff with one of those trumps, well, now instead of having 5 cards out, the declarer only has 4 out, and now leading the ace and king will drop your queen. That always makes it easier for him than maybe leaving the master trump out and trying to run a long suit only to have you trump in. So that's why most people don't lead singletons when they have a natural trump trick. You don't lead a singleton when partner cannot possibly have an entry. We just discussed the reason for that. And the other exception, and one that a lot of people don't think about, is when you hold forcing defense shape. Remember, we've talked about the forcing defense before, but we're going to talk about it again because it is the number one choice. When you have forcing defense shape, that takes priority over all other forms of defense, simply because it can be so very effective. Now, when does the forcing defense apply? When you have 4 trumps or you suspect that your partner does. In other words, it looks from the bidding like the opponents have an 8-card fit. Maybe the responder showed a 3-card limit raise. You can pretty well bet that that's an 8-card fit. If you have a singleton, odds are good that your partner has 4 trumps. The idea behind leading your long suit in this situation, rather than your singleton, if you have one, is to force the declarer to trump in the long trump hand. Remember, trumping in the long trump hand never adds to your trick total. Only trumping in the short trump hand adds to the trick total. So you want to be sure that if you force the declarer to ruff, that he has to ruff in his hand. And if you can force him to ruff enough times, say he has a 5-card trump suit in his hand. If you hold 4 of them, if you can force him to ruff even once, now you have the same number of trumps that he does. And if you can force him to ruff a second time, you now control the hand because you control the trump suit. The idea behind the forcing defense is to make the declarer ruff in his hand so many times that he loses control of the hand. When he loses control of the hand, he can't possibly make his contract. I have come to appreciate this in the last couple of years, number one, because I've had it done to me, and number two, because I've finally gotten half smart and learned to look for it. You'll be amazed how well it works. It works much better than leading a singleton when you have 4 trumps in your hand. If you have a long suit, and that long suit just means 5, if you take a trick, lead that suit again. Just keep pushing it and trying to make the declarer ruff. And a good deal of the time you will end up in the catbird seat, as they say. So after thinking about all of these things, if I don't have forcing defense shape, I don't have a singleton, if my partner can't possibly have an entry, all of these things, what suit should I lead? Well, number 1 on the hit parade is a short suit, unless one of the exceptions applies. This, for many people, takes precedence over a suit your partner bid. Now, in no trump, obviously a short suit lead isn't necessarily the best idea. In that case, partner has told you what his long suit is, usually. I mean, if he opened a convenient minor, that may or may not be true. But if he opened a major suit, for instance, he's already told you where his values are and where his length is. So number 2 is the suit your partner bid. He's given you an idea of what your side's long suit is and where you might be able to take tricks. If your partner didn't bid, then if you have top of touching honors in an unbid suit. Now, we're talking about defending suit contracts here. So if you have the top of touching honors, you're only required to have 2 of them. The king, queen only, for instance, would do. Queen, jack, and some little cards would do. King, queen, and some little cards. When we talk about no trump, we're going to add a card. But when defending a suit contract, you only need 2 touching honors. You might consider a trump, maybe leading one of the other suits finesses an honor in your hand. And you don't want to do that. And I can hear some of you saying, but what if I finesse a trump honor in my partner's hand? If you do it, that's nothing that the declarer can't do. If you can finesse your partner, declarer can finesse your partner. So leading the trump in that case hasn't cost anything. And all other things, if you decide that a trump lead isn't indicated, there's no particular reason to do it. Maybe you hold a high trump honor like the king or the queen and you don't want to finesse yourself, then you can select the 4th best from an unbid suit. Now, sometimes you want to lead your long suit. And as I said earlier, this is especially true when you're going to use the forcing defense. You want to make that declarer ruff in his hand as many times as possible. So unless he holds 7 or 8 trumps, he's in danger of having his trumps be shortened to the point that you have more than he does. This strategy is very effective, especially when the opening leader holds the ace in the trump suit. Sometimes you lead a long suit because you've listened to the bidding and you have an idea that your partner is short. This hand that I have put down here in the lower left-hand corner is a hand I held not this past week, but the week before in a game where I was playing with my partner, Mary. And I'm just sitting here watching North and South bid to 4 spades. And initially I looked at this hand and I thought, I'm going to lead my singleton heart. And then I thought, well, they're in a game contract. They have a double fit here, obviously. I have 11 high card points. Could my partner have the ace of hearts? Highly unlikely. And then I got to thinking about the auction. You know, when you're playing on BBO, the auction stays up there until you make the opening lead. So I said, okay, South bid 2 clubs and North raised clubs. That's a pretty good idea, or highly, strongly suggests that they have 8 cards and clubs, right? I have 4. That means my partner shouldn't have more than 1 club in her hand. So against all the rules that you're ever told about leading unsupported aces, out came the ace of clubs. My partner played the 2, and I thought, okay, well, that looks pretty discouraging, but I don't care. I'm going to lead it anyway. And so I put the 9 of clubs on the table after that. And sure enough, my partner roughed that trick. Did we set the contract? No, we didn't. We got the ace of clubs, club rough, and the ace of spades, and that was it, because my partner had 2 jacks in her hand. That was all. Had I led my singleton, declarer makes an over trick easily. We did not set the contract, but we got 95% on the board because most everybody else led the 6 of hearts. And those declarers made 5. We held the declarer to contract and didn't set it, but that turned out to be a very good board, simply because I thought about the very things that I'm showing you here. Mary was absolutely astonished. She said, how did you come up with the idea? How did you know I had a singleton club? I said, well, I did the math, 8 and 4 is 12. That means you can't have but 1. So these are examples of when you want to lead a long suit. Sometimes it seems like it's not the right thing to do at all, but we're listening to the bidding, doing the number rule, and figuring out that my partner cannot have the ace of hearts to give me a rough. So there was no particular reason for me to, this is Jack 10 8 as a broken sequence in diamonds, but there's no particular reason for me to lead that suit. All I do is help declare or pick up the diamond suit. But by leading that club and giving my partner a rough, even though we didn't set the contract, we got a very good result. Now, I get a lot of questions about what card I should lead. My partner has bid. Most everybody thinks that they're supposed to lead the highest card that they have. That is in general not true, and it's especially not true if you didn't support your partner. If you didn't support your partner, it's important for you to let him know how many cards you have in the suit. In a suit contract, remember, he may try to cash a high honor that isn't going to cash if you have 3 cards in his suit. So the most important thing that most partners want to know is, how many cards do you have in my suit? Was it a case of you don't have 3 cards to raise, or was it a case of you're just broke? Well, in this lesson, your partner was broke. So if you don't support partner, lead low from 3 small. Yeah, partner may think you have an honor, but if this is your agreement and you didn't support, then he should not make that assumption. He should not assume that you have a high honor in the suit if you did not support. You just need to let him know how many you have. And as always, if you have an even number of cards in the suit, lead high-low. Lead the top card either from 4 small or from 2 small. Top of a doubleton. If you supported your partner's suit, in this case, you weren't broke, so that he knows that you have 3 cards, now it is permissible for you to lead the top card. Sometimes this is counterproductive, and later on in a lesson on play, we'll look at examples where it is not productive to lead the high card when it's a king, particularly if you need to trap an honor in the declarer's hand. But for now, let's just go with, if you have supported partner so that he knows you have at least 3, then now you lead the top card, if that is your agreement. This is a rule that's not written in stone, so you should talk to your partner about it. Now, when you're leading from a sequence, as I said earlier, it's a little different when defending a suit contract from defending a no-trump contract. No-trump contracts are generally defeated based on length rather than high card strength. So this is the reason for the requirement for leading from a sequence against a no-trump contract to be either a perfect sequence, a broken sequence, or an interior sequence. For instance, these are all examples of perfect sequences and broken sequences. The underlined card is always a good choice here. If you have Queen, Jack, 9, 4, for instance, in a suit, don't lead the 4. You're giving the declarer an opportunity to win the trick with a 10. When you have a perfect sequence or an imperfect sequence, lead the top card. Against no trump, that needs to be 3 cards. But when you're defending a suit contract, only 2 touching honors are required, simply because very often the 3rd round of a suit gets roughed. And so requiring 3 honors is counterproductive. Now, any of you that learned bridge any length of time ago have no doubt heard the expression, when in doubt, lead a trump. That is the complete opposite of what the saying ought to be. When there is no doubt, you lead a trump. There's always a good indication of when it's a good idea to lead trumps. 2 primary situations, though, when it's really, really obvious. When the declarer is playing in his 2nd suit, you need to lead a trump. What do we know when declarer is playing his 2nd suit? We know that responder doesn't have a fit in the 1st suit when it was a major suit that was bid. Like in this example I've given you here, North opens a heart, South responds 1 spade. This is your holding is East, and North rebids 2 clubs and South passes. Short, sweet auction. We know from looking at the heart suit that North's heart suit is full of holes, isn't it? He does not have all winners in it. I could lead a spade through the dummy if I wanted to. But what do you suppose the declarer is going to do with all those losers he has in hearts when we know that the dummy is short in hearts? He's going to try to rough them in the dummy, in the shorthand, in other words. Although in this case, in a 2nd suit, there should be 4 cards in each hand. Partner bids a 2nd suit. You don't raise it or pass it unless that is simply a preference. If you raise it in particular, you've got to have 4 cards to raise his 2nd suit. So in this case, I'm thinking, I don't want any heart roughs coming. I've got winners in hearts. So what's it logical for me to do? It is logical for me to lead a trump on the go, to take 1 trump at least off the dummy. That's 1 heart rough he won't get. Notice I don't have a card that is going to enable me to win a trick with that card. But that doesn't matter. All I'm trying to do is cut down on heart roughs in the dummy. I'll worry about trying to take a spade trick later. So in this case, I am going to lead the 2 of clubs. Yeah, my partner may think I have an honor, but I don't care. I'm just going to lead that 2 of clubs. The second instance when you will probably want to lead a trump is when a passive defense is called for. This is an example of a classic auction that calls for a passive defense. Now take a look at opening leader's hand over here. This is the east hand again. Look at these side suits. If you lead the 4 of hearts, you're just asking to let the declarer win a cheap trick with the, maybe he's got the ace and queen. Maybe your partner has the queen, but I'll tell you what, when I need my partner to have the ace or the queen, he never does. I mean, I don't know what it is about my life, but things like this just don't work for me. And I've finally gotten to the point where I've kind of given up on leading from broken tennises like this, unless my partner and I have bid and raised the suit. Then, of course, I'm not so worried about it. If I underlead the king of diamonds, that's a very aggressive lead. And notice my hand here. I have an opening hand. What does that mean? The opponents are in a game contract. My partner is completely broke. I'm not expecting that partner has anything at all. So it doesn't make any difference which one of these side suits I lead. I am finessing myself, giving the declarer a free trick. So the best choice here, far and away, is to lead a small trump and make declarer figure out that all the points are in one hand. I don't need to be giving him any help to locate these high cards. So in this case, when a passive defense is called for, that frequently calls for the lead of a trump. When declarer is playing in his second suit, it calls for the lead of a trump. So there is no doubt in either of those situations that a trump lead is called for. Now, here's the best known lead in bridge. Oh, by the way, I want to ask a question. Let's say I did decide to lead a heart here from this hand. Which is the correct card? Anybody have a thought?
Jack.
Why is the jack right? You're correct, Harv. Why are you correct?
Top of a sequence.
It's the top of an interior sequence. Yes, those leads are hard to read. They really are. Your partner and the declarer, neither one know whether you have a higher honor or not. Now, against a suit contract, I would bet money that the higher card is not the ace. Very hard to read whether this is the top of a sequence or whether it's the top of an interior sequence. So they can be very effective leads. But in this case, since we're not in no trump, if I were playing no trump, I would strongly consider leading the jack of hearts. But we're in a suit contract. And by the time I get some tricks set up, declarer may be roughing hearts. And as I said, my partner doesn't have the ace or queen of hearts. I know that. They're in a game contract, and I've got 13 points. He might have one jack or two jacks, but that's all he could have. Obviously, the north hand is a very good hand. He got a minimum raise, and he bid game anyway. So he's got a very strong hand. I'm sitting behind him. I need to make him finesse into my hand if I'm going to have any chance at defeating this contract. And so that means I don't lead the jack of hearts. I don't lead a low diamond, and I certainly don't lead a club. That leaves only a trump. Now, in general, when the opening leader has eliminated all other choices, short suit leads, suit your partner bid, top of touching honors, is it appropriate for me to lead a trump? All that remains is the fourth best card in an unbid suit. What if all four suits have been bid? And that is frequently the case. Well, why aren't you in no trump is my first question. And that means that somebody has asked about a stopper in the fourth suit and it was denied. So we're in a suit contract, and now I have to pick a lead. And particularly if the dummy bid the fourth suit, that would stand out to me as a possibility. But I frequently feel like, oh, I think I just need to go out the back door and go home or get out of here. I have to lead, and I don't know what to lead. In this instance, remembering that a situation like that heart suit that I just showed you, like King Jack XX or King Jack 10 XX, or if defending no trump, Ace Queen XX, is a very, very risky lead. If that's your only choice, then think about that trump lead again. If you have a high trump honor and you may finesse yourself, well, is it the king guarded twice? Could you survive if the declarer got a trick with the queen? If you could, then you might want to consider leading the trump instead, because leading from these holdings, King Jack XX against a suit, or even Ace Queen XX versus no trump, is just incredibly risky. What you want to do is have your partner lead that suit where you hold the Ace Queen. If your right-hand opponent bid no trump, he's a strong favorite to hold the king. Yes, I know your partner may have the king, but that never works for me. I tried being a cockeyed optimist, and I got burned so many times, I just stopped doing it. Yes, sometimes I miss the only lead that would defeat the contract, but I got tired of giving declarers over tricks when leading from sequences like that, or broken tennises like that. So now, if it's a no trump contract, if you and your partner have agreed that when all else fails, you can lead low from 3 small, then do that. If your partner is agreeable, it can be hard to tell whether you're supposed to return that suit. Yes, but leading from 3 small against a no trump contract is far more common than you might realize, especially at the higher level games. So the reason for this is that there have been countless computer simulations and numerous books written on opening leads. And all of these guidelines have been come up with. But you got to remember, guidelines are not rules that are written in stone. They are just guidelines. And one of those guidelines is that one of the least successful leads is low from King XXX. It is very seldom a productive lead. Against a suit contract, in particular, this is true. In a no trump contract, you're going to get one trick. Unless some of those spot cards are the 10 and 9, you're not likely to get another one. And the truth is that you may get a trick from that king anyway. So this is the reason for a guideline that you're seeing more and more frequently these days. Leading the 4th best from a suit headed by a single honor, and this includes the ace, the king, or the queen, and of course a lead from Jack 4th is one of the 4 worst leads in bridge. So remember that. I was not aware of that until I started doing a lot of reading on opening leads, and I was surprised to find that somebody had written this down, because I have experienced this. I thought it was just me. But evidently there are other people who think that this applies often enough that this is not a good lead. And to be honest, despite all of these rules and guidelines, opening leads are often just a complete crapshoot. It turns out sometimes that the only lead to defeat the contract is the one that no one would ever choose. It just does not fit within the guidelines of the most successful opening leads. After all, our choices are made based on what works out well most often, not what works out one time in 2000. So the guidelines help, but don't ever think of them as the only right way to lead. To close up here, I've got a couple of hands that I would like to talk to you about in terms of what we've discussed earlier here and how all of this is applied to actual hands. Here's the auction. North opens a heart. South bids 2 diamonds. North rebids 2 spades. Yes, this looks like a reverse. But those of you who play 2/1 know that following a 2/1 response, bidding what looks like a reverse does not necessarily promise extra values. With some partnerships, it does. That makes it hard to tell when partner does have the values for a reverse. But it enables you to find, in this instance, a 4/4 spade fit if one exists. It does not on this hand, but North can bid 2 spades without promising extra values. And South's rebid is just basically says, well, I was only fooling about the diamonds. I actually have heart support and I have enough to bid game. So let's play 4 hearts. This means that East is on opening lead. And lo and behold, he has a singleton. Highly tempting, isn't it? But let's look at his hand here for a minute. He has 9 points. Could his partner have a singleton? Absolutely. Absolutely he could. They're in a game. That means they've got about 26. I have 9. That makes 35. Partner should have 5-ish points. By the way, these rules are more accurate in no trump contracts than they are in suit contracts, simply because of the role that distribution plays in bidding suit contracts. But that's beside the point here. If I'm sitting East, I think, well, my partner could have an ace. I could lead my singleton here, and I've got 4 small trumps. I might be able to get a ruff and then get a couple of club tricks, and down he goes. There's a really strong reason, though, why I shouldn't lead the singleton. This hand represents an example of an instance where leading a singleton is not desirable. This is an exception to leading a singleton against a suit contract. Does anybody know what it is? We've talked about it. He has 4 trumps and a long side suit. This is the prescription for leading his long suit rather than his short suit. The forcing defense is rearing its head here. If East recognizes this, watch what happens. He can lead the ace of clubs. Great, everybody follows. He can lead he leads the queen. When you're leading from a sequence like that, partner knows you have the king, but when you have the queen, most of the more experienced players will play the bottom card in the sequence to the second trick. So East will play the queen here. Dummy plays a club, partner plays a club, and lo and behold, North ruffs. Okay, that's cool. That's declared then says, well, it's about time to start pulling my trumps here. I've got 3 great cards in spades in the dummy. I have only 1 loser in clubs and 1 loser in diamonds, and maybe a loser in spades. If the spades don't break 3-3, then I have a spade loser maybe. But regardless, it looks like I'm pretty much a shoo-in for making 4 hearts here. So he starts leading trumps. And on the second round, he discovers the bad break. He says, well, yuck. This is not particularly friendly at all. So he says, if I draw all those trumps now, remember he's ruffed once. He only has 4 trumps left. East has 4 trumps. If North pulls all the trumps, then he's at the mercy of East with his clubs. So he says, maybe I better set up the diamonds here before I pull the rest of the trumps so that I've got my suit set up when I pull them and I can just play off on them and everything will be fine. I can still pick up the trumps and then I don't have to give up the lead in diamonds. This can still work. Well, partner takes his ace of diamonds and he knows what's up. He's been watching partner lead clubs and he knows partner has the king of clubs. So when he takes the ace of diamonds, down comes another club. This is the 3rd club. Now, if North ruffs, he has fewer trumps than East does. If he discards, well, okay, that just means that the declarer is going to have to either ruff or discard again. This is the classic situation of heads I win, tails you lose. If he trumps, then the 9 of hearts is promoted to a trick because he has shortened himself to only 3 cards in the trump suit. And the 9 becomes the master card. If the declarer discards, East just leads another club. Keep forcing him to make those tough decisions. Declarer, when the smoke clears, declarer is down 2 when he thought that this game was a lead pipe cinch. And it's all because East recognized the forcing defense situation and led his long suit rather than his short suit. Look what happens if he leads a spade. The trick is 1 in the dummy. Declarer pulls trumps, drives out the ace of diamonds, claims the contract. No sweat. In fact, he makes an over trick. So this makes all the difference. The forcing defense is deadly. I once asked Ron Hinkie, I said, how can I counter the use of the forcing defense when the defenders have me up against it? And he just smiled at me and he says, don't play against such good defenders. About all you can do is discard when you have a loser to discard, but at some point you have to trump so that you can still try to hold it to down 1 maybe instead of down 2. The forcing defense is so very effective, and that's why it is the number 1 choice when the conditions exist for the forcing defense. It takes priority over every other form of defense, including leading a singleton.
Susan, Roy has a question.
All right, go right ahead, Roy.
This goes back to the statement on the previous page about leading. You said most experts agree that and computer models confirm that the lead of a small card from the king is least desirable.
Yes.
Then you said the jack is included, jack
Well,
4.
In general, the 4 worst leads in bridge are leading low against a suit contract from a suit topped by the ace. That's the number 1 worst lead in bridge. The number 2 worst lead in bridge is leading an unsupported ace. Number 3 is leading low from jack 3rd. And the 4th one is leading low from jack 4th. It just takes too long to set up jack 4th, and jack 3rd is not terribly likely ever to take a trick.
Okay, so king 4, queen 4, jack 4, all of them are not good leads.
All of them in general, and I have read this in several books that are at levels beyond beginning lately that say leading, particularly against no trump. Now, leading against a suit contract, obviously you're never going to underlead the ace. That was the number 1 worst lead in bridge. Underleading a king or a queen is considered to be an aggressive lead. And most of the time against the suit contract, you're going to be defending passively. Against no trump, though, we're taught to lead the 4th from the longest and strongest, supposedly, in the hope that partner has something to help you. But computer models, this is David Bird and one of the other guys, I've forgotten his name right now, have put out 2 books where they have just run thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of computer simulations of opening leads and their success rates in various suit combinations. And without fail, this is one of the least effective opening leads. I never would have guessed it. Well, maybe my partner has a card that will help me set up my king. But the truth is that you're often going to get a trick with that king anyway, unless you're sitting in a highly finessable position. And if you are, then you just finessed yourself. But if your right-hand opponent holds the ace or your partner does, then, well, you're likely to get a trick with it anyway. So I don't know the exact reason why this is true. All I know is that this book very strongly states that based on all these computer simulations, that this is not in general a good lead. Now, if your partner has bid the suit, that changes everything. This is no bidding from your partner. I'm on opening lead and I have to choose something. I tried reading that book one day and I was asleep in 10 minutes. It is rather dry. I am not a technical type person that gets into a lot of this sort of thing. I just like to have conclusions distilled for me so that I don't have to look at all of this really wordy, involved stuff. And I've found that this conclusion is in that book. Now, whether you accept it or not, whether you and your partner agree with it, is completely up to you. Just because this is what the computer model says doesn't mean that you and your partner have to agree. Roy, you and your partner can have a discussion, and maybe you want to try it out and see if that bears fruit for you, or maybe you want to keep on keeping on, you know?
Thank you.
You bet. Mm-hmm. Okay, we talked about this hand, didn't we? And the importance of recognizing the conditions for when the forcing defense applies. In this case, partner wasn't broke. He did have an ace. Obviously, if the declarer had had the ace of diamonds, well, then he doesn't have to worry about it. He can just pull all the trumps and that's that. In general, when opponents are in a game contract, they have 26 to 28 high card points between them. When they start getting up closer to 30, they start making slam noises. And nobody did here. So in general, on a game contract, they're going to have about 26 points. You have 9. That means partner. Notice, partner had 5 high card points. He didn't have the ace of hearts, though. Just because the rule says that he could have an ace doesn't mean he has the ace you need. And in other circumstances, let's say your hand were a lot more flat. Let's say it's 4-4-4-1 instead of being 5-4-3-1, so that you didn't have a long suit to lead, then you would consider leading that singleton because I might have the ace of spades. It's more reasonable when you don't have a long suit that you can use to force the declarer, and you have enough trumps that he's going to be in trouble if he roughs more than once. That's the secret here to recognizing the forcing defense. Now, here we have another one. North opens a spade, South bids 2 diamonds. Looks a lot like the last one, doesn't it? And North raises diamonds. He says, well, hey, I pretty much like diamonds. I've got great cards for you, partner, 3 diamonds. But South says, no, I was only kidding again. Let's play spades. Everybody passes, and then East doubles. Boy, now the pressure's on. He's got to be thinking, we're going to have to beat this, because if I don't, I've given us a 0. So what's he going to do here? What's he going to do? This is another case where he needs to remember the bidding. He might lead the Queen of Hearts, right? Now, the opponents are in a game contract again. So what's the first thing he does? He uses the number rule. He has 11 high card points. The opponents are in a game contract. Partner probably has about 3 points, maybe. One opponent has even just a little bit more, or if they each have an extra point, then maybe the opponents have 28 points. But in this case, he needs to think a little bit longer. How did the bidding go? South bid 2 diamonds and North raised to 3 diamonds. East says, I've got 5 diamonds in my hand. My partner shouldn't have any diamonds in his hand. Unless somebody's lying, my partner has a diamond void. Now, this decides for East that, okay, it could be pretty productive for me to lead a diamond. My partner has a trump, we're going to get a trick. And surely he has a trump. I mean, if they had 10 trumps between them, the bidding might have gone a little differently. Which card, which diamond should East lead? What suit does he want his partner to lead back to him?
Lead the 2 of diamonds because he wants clubs led back.
Exactly. Remember how we talked about suit preference signals a couple of weeks ago? This is an example of choosing your opening lead when your partner can't have much, listening to the bidding and looking at your hand and saying, my partner can't possibly have any diamonds. And remembering that you've got to tell your partner how to get back to your hand so he can get another rough. The way you do that is with a suit preference when you're giving your partner a rough. Remember, this is one of the key times when you use a suit preference signal, when you're giving your partner a rough. So the 2 of diamonds should come out of East's hand. And North thinks, well, what's he doing? We bid and raise diamonds. Doesn't he know we have everything in this suit? So he plays from the dummy, and lo and behold, West trumps. North says, oh my word. Uh-oh. He knows trouble is coming. He can read suit preference signals just like anybody else. He says, oh my. He has told his partner to lead a club back. And sure enough, I don't have the ace. We're going to get a diamond rough here. Going to lose a club trick. We're going to get a second diamond rough on me, and then I'm missing the ace of trumps. What looked like a lead pipe cinch goes down because East paid attention to the bidding. It looked like that singleton heart was the obvious choice, didn't it? But based on the bidding and his holding in the suit and remembering to tell his partner where his outside entry is, if he has no outside entry, well, then he has to hope that partner has enough tricks that they can set the contract. But then if he didn't have an outside entry, most likely he wouldn't have doubled the contract. But after thinking about all of this, he doubled because he could envision the way the play to the first 4 tricks was going to go, or the first 3 tricks anyway. Those diamond roughs are limited by the fact that West only has 2 trumps, and plus the opponents only have 2 clubs. So they're limited because partner has only 2 trumps. If he only had 1 trump, then oh, well, that means they have 9 trumps between them, but that's not very likely. Why isn't that likely?
South didn't raise to 4 hearts on the first.
Well, if he had 5 trumps, he'd have raised preemptively, but when he has a hand this good, he doesn't give his partner a preemptive raise. He has an opening hand. In most instances, on auctions like this, there will be an 8-card fit. Sometimes there's a 9-card fit. And if that's the case here, then West has only 1 spade, and that's unfortunate. But the fact that East has 3 spades strongly suggests that West has 2, simply because of the way the bidding went. It's not terribly likely that North would have 4 diamonds to raise diamonds if he had 6 spades. If he had 6 spades, he'd have rebid spades rather than raising his partner's diamond suit. He doesn't know at the moment that partner's planning to support his spades later, so he needs to convey to his partner that he has 6 spades if he does. So his failure to rebid 2 spades hints that he has only 5 of them. So East pulls out that double card, or clicks the double if you're playing on BBO, because he trusts his partner to recognize the suit preference signal. He believes his partner has 2 trumps in his hand. There's a way back to his hand for him to give his partner a second diamond rough. And then he gets the trump ace. That's why he doubled. He could envision the way the first 4 tricks were going to go. This was a really good example of East paying attention to the bidding, honoring the agreements on the suit preference signals, and then just thinking logically, putting it all together. I just love defense. I think it's magic, but it's not really magic. The clues are there if you stop and think. And sometimes we feel like we're under the gun so much that we don't stop and think things through very well. I'm often guilty of getting halfway there, but like, I'm not sure I would have thought far enough ahead to double. I would be thrilled if I did, because I would probably figure out the defense, but if I didn't double, I might have cost us a top board. This is an example of the way things should go when you're riding with the angels in this particular game. You know, some days you ride with the angels all day, all your choices are right. Other days you can't buy a right choice. This is the way it goes if you're thinking logically and clearly, and you're able to figure all of this out. It's there, and all of you are capable of getting to the point where you can figure this stuff out too. I promise. If I can get to that point, all of you can too. So thanks for coming.
Hi, this is Susan. Thanks for stopping by the Oklahoma Collective's YouTube channel. Basically, this channel shows recordings of our free 1-hour bridge lessons for advancing players that we offer every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. If you would like to join us, send your contact information to the email address shown on the screen, and we'll be happy to send you the link. If you would like to follow our channel and be notified when a new recording is uploaded, just
push the subscribe button below.
Thanks for stopping by. Bye.